The conference hall stretched 300 meters across, filled with delegates from 47 species. Professor Velnik stood at the podium, his crystalline form refracting the ambient light into dancing patterns across the walls. He had spent 2 centuries researching planetary habitability, and his findings were about to reshape galactic colonization policy. "The data is irrefutable," Velnik announced, his voice translator rendering his frequencies into something the gathered species could comprehend. "No sentient species can survive sustained exposure to one standard gravity. The physiological stress is simply too severe." Murmurs rippled through the audience. The Krell delegation shifted their gelatinous bodies in their support tanks. The Threnodai clicked their mandibles in what might have been agreement or concern. Even the Vix, whose homeworld boasted 0.8 gravity, seemed troubled by the implications. Velnik continued, pulling up holographic displays that showed cellular degradation patterns, cardiovascular failure rates, and skeletal compression data from dozens of test subjects across multiple species. "We've attempted to acclimate volunteers from 23 different species to one-gravity environments. The longest any survived was 47 days. Most experienced critical system failures within 2 weeks. A tall figure stood in the back of the hall. The lighting made it difficult to see clearly, but Velnik noticed the movement. "The economic implications are staggering," Velnik pressed on. "Roughly 18% of habitable worlds fall into the one-gravity range. We must classify them as hostile environments, unsuitable for colonization without massive infrastructure investments in gravity manipulation technology." The figure in the back began walking down the central aisle. Other delegates turned to look. The being was bipedal, roughly 2 meters tall, moving with an easy stride that seemed almost casual. "Furthermore," Velnik said, trying to maintain focus on his presentation, "the energy expenditure required to maintain artificial gravity wells around one-gravity worlds would consume the equivalent of 3 Class 2 stars per planet. The Galactic Council must acknowledge that these worlds are simply beyond our reach for the foreseeable future." The figure reached the front of the hall. In the better lighting, Velnik could now see it clearly. Smooth skin, minimal body hair, bilateral symmetry. The database in his neural interface identified it instantly. Human. One of the newer species to achieve faster-than-light travel, hailing from a world designated as Sol. 3. "Yes?" Velnik asked, unable to hide his irritation at the interruption. "Do you have a question?" The human looked up at the holographic displays, then back at Velnik. Her expression was difficult to read, but something in her posture suggested amusement. "Just one," she said. Her voice was steady, unenhanced by any visible translator technology. "What gravity does your data say humans evolved in?" Velnik's crystalline structure flickered. He pulled up the human species file, scanning through the planetary data. His interface confirmed what he already suspected, but seeing it displayed made his thought processes stutter. "Sol 3. Gravity. 1.0 standard." The human waited, hands clasped behind her back. Around the hall, other delegates were accessing the same information. The Krell began vibrating in their tanks. The Threnodi's clicking grew louder, more agitated. "There must be an error in the database," Velnik said, but his voice lacked conviction. He built his entire career on rigorous data verification. If there was an error this fundamental, it would invalidate decades of research. "No error," the human replied. "Earth is a one-gravity world. Always has been. We evolved there, we live there. Right now, there are 11 billion of us walking around on that planet, going about our lives completely unaware that we're supposed to be dead." Velnik's mind raced through the implications. If humans could survive one gravity, what did that mean for his research? He reviewed his test data again, searching for any indication of how this was possible. "How long have your species existed in this environment?" he asked. "Anatomically modern humans? About 300,000 years. Our evolutionary ancestors, millions of years before that." The silence in the conference hall was absolute. Even the ambient environmental system seemed to quiet, as if the station itself was holding its breath. The human took a step closer to the podium. "So here's my real question, Professor. If your data says no species can survive one gravity, and we've been doing it since before we discovered fire, what else might your data be wrong about?" Captain Lisa Morgan remembered the moment she volunteered for the diplomatic corps. Her training officer had warned her that representing humanity meant more than shaking hands and signing treaties. It meant challenging assumptions that had calcified over millennia. Standing in front of Professor Velnik, watching his crystalline form pulse with what she interpreted as distress, she understood that lesson in a new way. "This is impossible," Velnik said. but he was already pulling up human physiological data. The holographic displays multiplied around him, showing skeletal structure, cardiovascular systems, muscular composition. Your bone density is extraordinary. Your heart generates pressures that would rupture the circulatory systems of most species. Your muscle fibers are compressed in ways that should cause constant pain. Should, but don't, Lisa said. Because we're built for it. A delegate from the Serpix Union slithered forward, her scaled body reflecting the blue emergency lighting that had activated when the station's AI detected the rising tension in the room. Captain Morgan, your military records indicate you've served in combat operations. Running, carrying equipment, engaging in sustained physical activity. Running. All under one standard gravity. That's correct, Ambassador Thess. For how long? I've been in the service for 12 years. But I've been living under one gravity my entire life. 34 years. The Threnodai delegate's translation device crackled to life. This changes the strategic calculations significantly. If humans can operate in environments that are lethal to us, the balance of power in contested territory shifts dramatically. Lisa had expected this. Fear always followed close behind surprise.
Ambassador, we're not here to threaten anyone. We came to this conference because we believed we were learning how to be better neighbors.
We didn't know that our homeworld was considered uninhabitable. Velnik had composed himself enough to speak again. The question remains, how? What adaptation allows this? I'm not a biologist, Lisa said. But our scientists have theories. Dense bone structure, efficient oxygen processing, cardiovascular systems that evolve to fight gravity with every heartbeat. We're heavy worlders, Professor. We just didn't know there was any other way to be. A small delegation from the Prill Confederacy approached. They were delicate beings, their homeworld barely reaching 0.4 standard gravity. Their leader, whose name Lisa's translator rendered as Questioner 7, spoke in whistling tones. Captain, you must understand our concern. Your species has introduced vessels into our trade networks. Ships that contain one-gravity standard environments. We assumed these were generation ships designed for long-term transit where passengers would live entire lifetimes. You're saying these are normal operating conditions? For us, yes. And your military vessels? Lisa hesitated. She knew where this was leading. Also, one gravity. We didn't see a reason to change it. The implications spread through the assembly like a shockwave. Human ships were fortresses that most species couldn't even board. Boarding actions, a staple of space combat doctrine for thousands of years, would be suicide against human vessels. Even if attackers breached the hull, they'd be crushed by the environment itself. We've created documents outlining our environmental requirements for diplomatic stations, Lisa said quickly. We're prepared to meet in neutral gravity environments for all official functions. We're not trying to weaponize our physiology. But she could see the calculation in their eyes, the fear mixing with a grudging respect. Humanity had just revealed itself as something unprecedented in the galactic community, not through superior technology or ancient wisdom, but through simple biological reality. Professor Velnik had been silent for several minutes, processing the data. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a different tone. Captain Morgan, I need to request something unusual. Would you be willing to undergo a full medical evaluation? Voluntary, of course. Your species' biology could represent the most significant scientific discovery of this millennium. I'll need to consult with my superiors, Lisa said. But personally, I don't object. Understanding how we're different might help everyone adjust to our presence. A new voice cut through the chatter. It came from a delegate Lisa hadn't noticed before, representing the Gen Dominion. They were an old species, one of the first to achieve interstellar travel. The captain is being diplomatic, but let's address the military concerns directly. How many humans are there? 11 billion on Earth, Lisa said. Another 2 billion spread across our colonies and stations. You've colonized one-gravity worlds? And higher. Our latest settlement is on a world we call New Boston, 1.2 standard gravity. The colonists report some adjustment difficulties, but nothing insurmountable. The Gen delegate's optical sensors flickered. You can survive above standard gravity. For the love of the old stars, what is your upper limit? We don't know yet, Lisa admitted. We haven't found it. The conference devolved into chaos. Delegates shouted questions in dozens of languages, their translation devices struggling to keep pace. Security personnel moved to the edges of the hall, uncertain whether this constituted an emergency. Professor Velnick stood at his podium, his holographic displays forgotten, staring at Lisa as if she were a puzzle that might take centuries to solve. Ambassador Thess managed to restore some order, her voice amplified through the station speakers. We will reconvene in 6 hours. I suggest everyone use that time to review the human database entries thoroughly. Professor Velnick, I trust you'll adjust your presentation. Lisa stayed at the front of the hall as the delegates filed out. Many gave her a wide berth as if proximity to a heavy worlder might somehow be dangerous. Others approached with cautious curiosity, asking brief questions about human capabilities before retreating to consult with their delegations. When the hall had mostly cleared, Velnick descended from the podium. Up close, his crystalline structure was beautiful, facets catching and splitting light in mesmerizing patterns. Captain, I want to apologize. My research was thorough, but I failed to account for the possibility of exceptions. That's a scientist's cardinal sin. You couldn't have known, Lisa said. We're new here. Most species don't even have humans in their databases yet. Still, I presented absolutes when I should have presented probabilities. The difference matters. He paused, his internal light dimming slightly. May I ask you something personal? Go ahead. When you learned that most species consider your homeworld lethal, how did that make you feel? Lisa considered the question. Lonely, I think. We spent so long wondering if we were alone in the universe. When we finally developed FTL and found you all, it was like coming home. Learning that home itself is the thing that makes us different feels like being excluded from a club we just joined. An interesting perspective, Velnick said. From where I stand, you've just proven that life is more resilient and varied than we imagined. That's not exclusion. That's hope. Lisa watched him leave, his form casting prismatic shadows on the walls. She checked her communicator and found 17 messages from Earth Command, each one more urgent than the last. The news had already spread beyond the conference. Humanity's revelation was rippling through diplomatic channels, military networks, and scientific institutions across the galaxy. She composed a response to her commanding officer, keeping it brief. Conference proceeding as expected. Some surprises on both sides. We'll report fully after reconvening. What she didn't mention was the weight settling onto her shoulders, not the physical weight of Earth's gravity, which she barely noticed anymore, but the weight of responsibility. Humanity had just become something the galaxy needed to reckon with, and she was standing at the center of that reckoning. The 6-hour recess passed in a blur of meetings. Lisa found herself in conference rooms with delegates who ranged from terrified to fascinated. The Krell wanted to know if humans felt pain from constant gravity exposure. The Vix asked about human military doctrine and whether gravity manipulation played a role. The Prel requested detailed schematics of human vessels, ostensibly for safety compliance but probably for tactical analysis. Through it all, Lisa maintained her diplomatic composure. She answered questions honestly without revealing classified information, emphasized humanity's peaceful intentions without appearing weak, and tried to project confidence without arrogance. It was exhausting work, made more difficult by the fact that she was operating in zero-gravity sections of the station, which left her feeling slightly nauseous despite her training. When the conference reconvened, the atmosphere had changed. The initial shock had given way to calculation. Every species was reassessing their relationship with humanity through this new lens. Professor Velnick opened the session with a revised presentation. I have adjusted my findings. The statement should read, no known species except humans can survive sustained exposure to one standard gravity. This exception is significant enough to warrant a complete review of our assumptions about planetary habitability and species distribution. The Gen delegate spoke next. The Dominion moves to establish a working group to study human physiology and its implications for galactic society. We need protocols for interaction, safety standards for mixed species facilities, and frank discussions about the security implications. Several delegates voiced agreement. Lisa noticed that the phrasing had been carefully chosen. Security implications, not military threats. It was diplomatic language, but the concern underneath was clear. Ambassador Thess took the floor. Captain Morgan, the Serpix Union would like to propose a cultural exchange program. We send scientists and diplomats to experience human environments under controlled conditions. In return, human specialists come to our worlds to help us understand your species better. It was a reasonable request, and Lisa knew Earth Command would likely approve. I'll forward your proposal to my government. I think it's a good idea. Other proposals followed. Joint research initiatives, mixed species training programs, even suggestions for human-operated rescue services that could access high-gravity worlds other species couldn't reach. The conversation was moving from fear toward cooperation, though Lisa suspected that in private chambers, military planners were having very different discussions. The session continued for hours. Technical questions about human limitations, philosophical debates about the nature of adaptation, economic analyses of how human capabilities might reshape trade and colonization. Lisa answered what she could, deferred what she couldn't, and tried to bridge the growing divide between species who saw humans as partners and those who saw them as potential threats. During a brief intermission, a young delegate from a species Lisa didn't recognize approached her. Their translation device identified them as Rinnick from a 0.3 gravity world on the galactic rim. "Captain, I have a question that might sound strange. Go ahead. Do you feel powerful, knowing that you're stronger than most species you'll ever meet?" Lisa considered her answer carefully. "I don't feel powerful. I feel normal, which I think is the problem, isn't it? This is just what we are. We don't think about gravity any more than you think about breathing. It's just there. But now that you know, does it change how you see yourself?" "Maybe," Lisa admitted. "I'm still processing it this morning. I thought I understood where humanity fit in the galaxy. Now, I'm not so sure." The young delegate nodded, a gesture their species apparently shared with humans. "For what it's worth, I don't think you should feel guilty about being strong. The galaxy needs strong species. We just need to trust that you'll use that strength wisely." It was a simple sentiment, but it cut through the diplomatic complexity that had dominated the day. Trust. That's what this was really about. Could the galaxy trust humanity to be a responsible member of the interstellar community, knowing that humans were physiologically superior to most species they'd encounter? Lisa didn't have an answer. She could make promises and Earth Command could draft policies, but trust would be earned through actions over time. This conference was just the beginning of a much longer conversation. When the session finally concluded, Lisa was exhausted. She made her way back to the human section of the station, where the gravity transitioned from 0 to 1 standard over a 100-meter corridor. She'd never appreciated that transition before, but now she felt every increment as a reminder of what made her species unique. Her quarters were small but adequate. She collapsed onto her bunk, feeling the familiar pull of artificial gravity that matched Earth's. For the first time in her life, she was truly aware of it. The weight of her body against the mattress, the effort required to lift her arm, the constant work her heart was doing to pump blood against gravity's resistance. This was normal for her. This was lethal for most of the galaxy. She pulled up her personal logs and began recording. Day 1 of the conference started normally but ended with humanity's role in the galaxy fundamentally redefined. We are the heavy worlders, the exception to rules that scientists thought were universal. I don't know yet what this means for our future, but I know it changes everything. Tomorrow, I meet with the Security Council to discuss protocols for human-operated spaces. They're afraid of us. They're fascinated by us. Maybe they're right to be both. Sleep came slowly. Lisa's mind kept returning to Professor Velnick's question. What else might the data be wrong about, and more troubling? What else about humanity might the galaxy find threatening once they looked closer? The next morning brought new challenges. Lisa woke to find that overnight, human physiology had become the most discussed topic across galactic networks. News services were running analysis pieces. Military academies were updating their training materials. Civilian forums were filled with speculation about human capabilities and intentions. Her communicator had accumulated 42 new messages. Most were from other human diplomats scattered across the galaxy, reporting similar reactions in their respective postings. Some faced questions, others faced hostility. One reported that a scheduled cultural exchange had been abruptly canceled, with the host species citing unspecified security concerns. Earth Command had sent updated guidance. Emphasize peaceful intentions. Offer transparency about human capabilities. Do not minimize our physiological advantages, as that would seem dishonest, but do not flaunt them either. Be humble, be open. Be patient. Lisa dressed and made her way to the Security Council meeting. The council chamber was in a neutral gravity section, which meant she'd be operating at a disadvantage while everyone else was in their comfort zone. She suspected that was intentional. 12 species were represented on the council, with the Gen serving as chair. Ambassador Thess was present for the Serpix Union. The others Lisa recognized from their database entries: the Morvith Collective, the United Thermal Worlds, the Crystalline Assembly, and several others. These were the military and security leadership of the major galactic powers. Captain Morgan. The Gen Chair began. "Thank you for joining us. We have concerns." "I'm here to address them," Lisa said. "Let's start with the basics. Human military doctrine. Your ships maintain one-gravity environments. How many vessels are currently in operation?" Lisa had expected this question and had clearance to answer. Earth maintains a fleet of 247 military vessels, ranging from frigates to dreadnoughts, and additional 18 vessels are under construction. Colony worlds and corporate interests operate another 73 armed ships, all with one-gravity interiors? Correct. The Morbith representative of being composed of flowing metallic liquid contained within a force field rippled in what their species used as speech. Their translator rendered it as, "This presents a significant tactical advantage. Our military doctrine has relied on boarding actions as a primary means of ship capture for 3,000 years. Against human vessels, this doctrine is obsolete. We're willing to share our environmental systems technology," Lisa offered. "Gravity manipulation that would allow your forces to operate in human standard environments. We don't want to maintain an unfair advantage." "Generous," the Gen Chair said, but their tone suggested skepticism. "However, that assumes we can trust that such technology doesn't contain backdoors or vulnerabilities that favor human forces." There it was, the fundamental problem. How could humanity prove it wasn't a threat when its mere existence shifted the balance of power? "Then verify it," Lisa said. "Assign your best engineers to examine every system we share. Run it through your security protocols. Take as long as you need. We're not asking for blind trust." Ambassador Thess spoke up. "The Serpix Union appreciates this offer, but it addresses only part of our concern. Captain, your species has been spacefaring for less than a century. You're still expanding, still exploring. What happens when you encounter a resource-rich, high-gravity world that no other species can claim? What stops humanity from building an empire on worlds the rest of us can't even visit?" "The same things that stop anyone from building an empire," Lisa said. "Laws, treaties, and the knowledge that aggressive expansion makes enemies. We didn't come to space looking for conquest. We came looking for neighbors." "Noble sentiment," the Morvith representative said, "but intentions change. Civilizations rise and fall. The ability to dominate doesn't guarantee domination, but it creates temptation." Lisa took a breath, choosing her words carefully. "You're right. We could claim high-gravity worlds. We could use our physiology as a weapon. We could do a lot of things. But consider this. We didn't know we had these advantages until yesterday. We've been operating in good faith, following galactic law, respecting boundaries and treaties. Learning that we're stronger than we thought doesn't change our values, doesn't it?" the Gen Chair asked. "Knowledge changes everything, Captain. You can't have known what you've learned about humanity's place in the galactic hierarchy." The meeting continued for 3 more hours. They discussed human settlement patterns, military deployments, technological capabilities, and diplomatic history. Every answer Lisa gave seemed to spawn 3 more questions. The Council wanted data, reassurance, and guarantees, but she sensed that no amount of information would fully ease their fears. Finally, the Gen Chair called for a recess. "We need to confer privately. Captain, please remain available." Lisa found herself in a waiting area adjacent to the Council chamber, alone with her thoughts. Through the transparent walls, she could see the station's central hub, where beings from dozens of species went about their business. How many of them knew about the conference revelations? How many were looking at humans differently now? Her communicator buzzed. It was a message from Professor Velnick. "Captain, I've completed preliminary analysis of human physiological data. The findings are remarkable. Would you be willing to meet?" Lisa confirmed, grateful for something productive to do while the Council deliberated. She navigated to Velnick's temporary laboratory, the space the station had allocated for his research equipment. The professor's crystalline form was surrounded by holographic displays showing human anatomy in intricate detail. "Fascinating," he said as Lisa entered. "Your species shouldn't exist according to everything we thought we knew about the limits of biological adaptation."
And yet here I am. Indeed.
"Look at this." He pulled up a comparison of human skeletal structure against 20 other species. Bone density, calcium ratification, the architecture of load-bearing joints. "You're built like siege equipment." "That's a disturbing way to put it, but accurate." "And your cardiovascular system is even more impressive. The pressure differentials your heart manages would cause aneurysms in most species. You're a walking impossibility, Captain." Lisa studied the displays. She'd seen human anatomy charts before, but never with this comparative context. Every system in her body was optimized for an environment that most of the galaxy considered lethal. Professor, is there anything about human biology that isn't threatening? Velnik's light pulsed in what she'd learned to interpret as amusement. Your immune system is rather ordinary, and your processing speed for sensory information is actually below average compared to predator species. So, we're strong but slow? Comparatively, yes, though I suspect your scientists would argue that human cognition compensates in other ways. He shifted the displays. But I didn't ask you here to discuss your limitations. I want to propose something. I'm listening. A comprehensive study. Not just physical examination, but cultural analysis, historical review, everything that made humanity what it is. I want to understand not just how you survived one gravity, but what that survival shaped in your psychology, your philosophy, your approach to problems.
You think growing up in high gravity affected our culture? Undoubtedly. Consider this. Most species experience their environment as fundamentally neutral.
Gravity is just there, a background constant that requires minimal attention. But for humans, gravity has been an adversary since your species first stood upright. Every time you lift something, climb something, or simply stand, you're fighting against a force that wants to pull you down. That has to shape how you think about struggle, effort, achievement.
Lisa had never considered it that way, but Velnik was right.
Human language was filled with gravity metaphors, heavy burdens, rising above challenges, the weight of responsibility, being grounded, having gravitas. Their entire conceptual framework was built around the constant fight against falling. What would this study involve? Teams of researchers visiting Earth observing human society in its natural context. Simultaneously, volunteers from various species would live in human standard gravity under controlled conditions to experience what you experience. We need both perspectives to truly understand. I can forward the proposal, Lisa said, but I have to warn you, Earth Command might be cautious about outside researchers right now. The Security Council is pretty spooked. Understandable. But Captain, consider this. Knowledge reduces fear. The more we understand about humanity, the less threatening you become. Mystery breeds paranoia. Transparency breeds trust. Before Lisa could respond, her communicator signaled. The Security Council was ready to reconvene. The atmosphere in the council chamber had changed. The delegates seemed to have reached some kind of consensus, though Lisa couldn't tell if that was good or bad for humanity. The Gen Chair spoke first.
Captain Morgan, we've discussed your offers and assurances. We have a counterproposal.
I'm listening. The Council will establish a permanent liaison position, filled by a human officer to serve as a bridge between human and non-human military commands. This liaison will have access to strategic planning sessions and will provide transparency about human military movements and capabilities. In exchange, humanity will agree to limitations on heavy worlder colonization and mandatory environmental accommodations for mixed species. Now, Lisa processed the proposal. They wanted oversight, but they were offering integration. It was a compromise that acknowledged both the threat and the opportunity that humanity represented. I'll need to consult with Earth Command, she said. But speaking personally, I think it's reasonable.
There's more, Ambassador Thess added.
The Serpix Union is willing to sponsor humanity's application for full council membership. With an expanded council, humanity would have direct input into security policy rather than being subject to decisions made without your voice. That was unexpected. Full council membership meant responsibility, but also legitimacy. It meant the galaxy was willing to treat humanity as an equal partner, despite, or perhaps because, of their unique capabilities. That's generous, Lisa said carefully.
May I ask what changed your minds? The Gen Chair's optical sensors focused on her.
Frankly, Captain, we realized we have no choice. Humanity exists. Humanity is powerful. We can either treat you as a threat to be contained, which guarantees eventual conflict, or we can treat you as a partner to be integrated, which gives us all a chance at peaceful coexistence. The decision was easier than you might think, the Morvith representative added. Besides, there are advantages to having heavy worlders in the Council. Imagine rescue operations on high-gravity worlds, or resource extraction from environments we can't access. Your capabilities could benefit everyone if we can build the trust necessary to work together. Lisa felt something loosen in her chest. This wasn't perfect, and she suspected there would be difficult negotiations ahead. But it was a path forward. Humanity wouldn't be isolated or feared. They'd be challenged to prove themselves worthy of trust. Which was fair. I'll transmit your proposal immediately, she said. and I'll recommend that Earth Command accept. The meeting concluded with formal protocols and scheduling for follow-up sessions. As Lisa left the council chamber, she felt the weight of the day settling into her muscles. Not the weight of gravity, which she barely noticed, but the weight of being humanity's representative, at a pivotal moment. She returned to her quarters and composed a detailed report for Earth Command. She included her recommendations, her observations about the various species' concerns, and her assessment that this was the best possible outcome given the circumstances. Humanity had revealed itself as exceptional, but rather than being rejected, they were being invited to join the galactic power structure. As she finalized the report, another thought occurred to her. She added a final paragraph. We need to start thinking about what kind of galactic citizen humanity wants to be. We have advantages that most species lack. How we use those advantages will define us for generations. We can be exploiters, protectors, partners, or leaders. The choice is ours, but we need to make it consciously before circumstances force our hand. She transmitted the report and sat back, feeling the familiar embrace of Earth's standard gravity. Tomorrow would bring more meetings, more negotiations, more careful navigation of interspecies politics. But tonight, she allowed herself a moment of cautious optimism. Humanity had asked a simple question. What else might the data be wrong about? In doing so, they'd forced the galaxy to reconsider assumptions that had stood for millennia. It was uncomfortable, disruptive, and necessary. The professor had claimed no species survives one gravity. He'd been wrong, but that error had opened up possibilities neither humans nor the galactic community had imagined. Wrong data, Lisa thought, sometimes leads to right questions. And right questions change everything. She closed her eyes, feeling the pull of gravity that had shaped her species for millions of years. For the first time, she truly appreciated what that meant. Humanity hadn't just survived the weight of their world. They'd been forged by it, strengthened by it, defined by it. The galaxy was about to learn what that really meant.